What is up, my friends? Welcome to another video. Today we are going to be exploring this Deutsche Bank merger situation going on in Germany. Now, if you're not in a Discord and you're not aware of my current position, my position for most of this year, I don't actually remember when I started talking about it, but it was around the end of the first quarter of this year. I started talking about how I thought Deutsche Bank was going to fall in 2018. It looks like now that's wrong because they want to save it. They want to merge this up with Commerce AG. If you look at the kind of propaganda in the news and how that's playing out, it would look like that this is their solution. And what annoys me about this and some of these pieces that you're seeing written is like the too big to fail. I don't even know how that worked in 2008, but guys, if the banks get a bailout, then the taxpayers pay the bailout. We end up paying. Yet we did not have any say in how that money was spent. And we don't even know, like, is that money still on the balance sheet? Is that still in the books in some sort of way as part of this, either the central bank's debt, which you can go and see on the St. Louis Fed site right now, or the U.S. debt that we have, which just crossed over 22 trillion. Like, is that number still in there? Did they just, or did it go away like it was supposed to on at least one side of the sheet? I don't know. I haven't looked that deep. And so there's some of this piece right here. Deutsche Bank's regulators know how it got so weak. This was just written December 17th. They're literally trying to make this argument that it's too big to fail meets too big to jail. Like, is that just a soundbite that sounds good and that's why they said it? Because this is so obnoxious to me. First off, Deutsche Bank is not one of the largest banks in the world. JP Morgan is the largest bank literally in the world. Yeah, I just don't get why they're trying to make it seem like it's too big and we just can't let this one go and it's this and that. Like, we can, because they've been associated now with misconduct. Since the raiding November 30th on their offices in Frankfurt, things haven't gotten better, obviously, but I hope that not just, because this is a German bank, I hope that not only the American people, but the German people just say, hey, you know what, enough is enough, because there's an EU bank bailout shortly after the American bank bailout in 2008. And here we are 10 years later, and shit's way worse. Let's look at this, which is 4 charts on why bank merger would make sense. This was seeded earlier this year. I seriously think a lot of the times this is just what they want to do, and then they kind of try and rationalize it way earlier than when they want to do it, so then they can point back and say, see, we were talking about this in June. It just makes sense. You know what I mean? So maybe that's just a theory I have, but at this point, they were still talking about they need to clean the balance sheets. I haven't heard any update on them clearing up the balance sheets since then. Deutsche Bank and Commerce Bank both in pretty big trouble. 2017 return on equity, both hardly squeaking out profit versus the average. Low profitability hits the bank's valuations. Deutsche Bank trades at barely 1/3 the book value of its assets. Key shareholders in Deutsche Bank have signaled they oppose a merger at the current price-to-book ratio, as it would mean giving up too much of the bank's latent value to Commerce Bank shareholders. People familiar with their thinking have said. And that's another thing too, is like people familiar with their thinking have said. What does that even mean? Is that a source or not? Deutsche Bank and Commerce Bank PB ratios trail the European average. That's the price-to-book ratio. That was done in Q1 of 2018. Hasn't gotten better. They're both struggling banks, and I get why there's even been talks of a merger to begin with. One more thing I wanted to share with you. This has left Deutsche Bank in a precarious position. As of September, it had just 4 euros in capital for every 100 euros in assets. There it is. And poor prospects of raising money, given its low share price, mounting legal issues, and uninspiring profit outlook. A loss of 13.3 billion euros could bring it below the already meager regulatory minimum. No wonder German officials are getting worried. This is German government, German officials going after, essentially going after Deutsche Bank for everything, for the allegations. I do think a merger would help. I think that this is something that should have been looked at more in the 2008 crash, because if we look at what happened to Baron Stearns, I don't understand how everyone else got a bailout but they didn't. And back then we were touting around the too big to fail, too big to jail. Were we saying that? No, but we were saying too big to fail. It's just interesting to me that one got hosed in that whole situation. Is Deutsche Bank going to be one that gets hosed? Because it's a big bank in Germany, but I wouldn't say it's a big global bank. Or are they going to get saved in some sort of merger, which from a shareholder standpoint would kind of suck from both sides. Well, Commerce Bank I think would get a better deal than Deutsche, but it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to get a merger, or it's going to fall, or a third option, because I see the merger as a bailout, but I guess let's divvy them up properly. And the third option would be it gets its bailout in some sort of government capacity, and government would get ownership. Now that's being talked about as well. That was talked about, I believe, in this this piece, which obviously the discussions are starting to heat up, but the business models of both banks are complementary and it would be good fit for scale. I would agree with that. Somewhere I read that the actual German officials, the German government, would get some controlling stake in Deutsche if they do a bailout, which I think that's completely normal. Like, there's got to be some sort of terms in with the payout. And again, to reference 2008, just go back and look. All the articles are still around. You can go back to all these news sites and see what they were talking about back then. Those terms were not talked about back then because the U.S. does not own any more of the banks or any less of the banks than they did before that bailout. So they got the short end of the stick there. So I'm glad that this is at least coming up and being talked about. But there's a lot more micro involved in this. I'll link all three of these pieces underneath. I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed on this. And it looks like I'm wrong on my prediction, which is that they would go under in 2018. It looks like we're going to be stretching this whole situation into the first quarter of 2019. I think we'll get to some sort of conclusion in the first quarter of 2019, and it'll be some variation of a bailout. Essentially, a merger to me is kind of a bailout, or the government will step in and do some sort of bailout with them, and we'll see what the fallout is like. But this is definitely one to follow if you're following the global macro. Okay. All right, that's it, my friends. If you like this video, just go ahead and click the like button. If you want to say something, I would love to hear your thoughts below in the comments section. And then also, too, in the description box, there's a couple ways that you can support us financially. A lot of times we're doing a lot of research and putting in a lot of time to make these videos because this is what I'm insanely passionate about, and I just want to share this with you. So any support from you, buying some t-shirts here or there, the couple dollars we get, supporting us on Patreon and all the other things that we've got underneath there, buying through those affiliate links, etc., that really does go a long way, and it really does help support this channel. So thank you so much for taking time to tune in and stay informed, and we'll see you very soon in a future video. Bye.